Unit 15 Entrepreneurship and Capitalism. Contents: 15.1 Introduction, 15.2 Meaning of Entrepreneurship, 15.3 Theoretical Background of Entrepreneurship with special reference to Max Weber and Joseph Schumpeter. 15.4 Contribution of Max Weber, 15.5 Contribution of Schumpeter, 15.6 Studies on entrepreneur other than Weber, 15.7 Conclusion, and 15.8 Further reading. Learning objectives. After you have read this unit, you should be able to provide the meaning of entrepreneurship, discuss the contribution of Weber and Schumpeter, describe other attempt to study the phenomena of entrepreneurship. 15.1 Introduction. In this unit, entrepreneurship and development of capitalism as analyzed by social scientists to the theoretical understanding has been discussed briefly. Effort has been made to analyze that how social sciences can provide new and fresh ideas about the theory of entrepreneurship and development of capitalism. While analyzing this theoretical foundation of the classical thinkers, Weber and Schumpeter has been identified. When classical theory of economics on its strength was rejected by the German historical school, Weber's theoretical assertion had become meaningful on its theoretical ground. It has been described in section 1.3. Weber's idea on entrepreneurship is generally identified with the theory of charisma. The perspective to which this theory is able to demonstrate the development of capitalism in the primitive stage of society is appeared in the subsection 1.3.1. Also, this section presents how Protestant ethos has provided such a social condition where entrepreneur achieved social acceptance and led the development of capitalism, which was not available before the Reformation. While subsection 1.3.2 of this unit dealing with Schumpeter's contribution on entrepreneurship with reference to the theory of economic development and his economic, psychological and sociological perspective have also been identified. How for Durkheim's idea can be useful to understand entrepreneurship has been tried to develop in subsection 1.3.3, and some ideas of modern sociologists have also been incorporated in this section. Finally, summary of this unit is given. 15.2 Meaning of entrepreneurship. There is some unresolved controversy in the meaning of entrepreneurship, although there is some consensus also about the entrepreneurship, which includes a part of administration and its function in decision-making process for regulating some type of organization. Some scholars refer to the term for strategic or innovative decision, while others apply it for business organizations. The term can be clarified in the historical context. The genesis, do something. The genesis of the world is French, which appeared long back particularly to denote to do something. During early 16th century, those who were engaged in leading military expeditions were labeled as entrepreneurs. After 1700, the word was frequently referred to by the French for government road, bridges, harbor and fortification contractors, and later to the architects. By 1800, the word appeared in the academic discipline as it had been used by a considerable number of the French economists who treated the word in a specific sense in the field of economics. That has given special meaning to the entrepreneur and entrepreneurship, with the differences emerging mostly from the features of the sector of economy. And those economists who were interested in government treated the entrepreneur as a contractor, agriculture specialist, farmer and industrialist as a risk-taking capitalistic Encyclopedia of Social Science 87-88. However, entrepreneur and entrepreneurship have been used in various contexts by the scholars at various point of time. 15.3 Theoretical background of entrepreneurship with special reference to Max Weber and Joseph Schumpeter. Max Weber and Schumpeter, though they belong to sociology and economics respectively, have contributed to develop theory to analyze entrepreneurship and its role in the development of capitalism in society. Both theorists, with respect to their ideas and theories, have come some consensus and some differences. Schumpeter paid attention on identifying the pre-scientific vision, hence he made the task rather easier and assumed entrepreneur merely a manager circular flow development system. So far as Weber's ideas are concerned, it is a difficult task to make an identification, as these thoughts on entrepreneurship are often scattered in his old works. Nevertheless, the Protestant ethics and the spirit of capitalism can be identified and a point of departure where he built up some theoretical foundation to understand the development of capitalism. Both scholars, varying in their interest, have formulated social theories and economic sociologies which up to some extent are similar in scope and theoretical conclusion. Many analogies can even be attributed Marx, and many are yet to be explained. Schumpeter took the idea of Marx in analyzing social aspects of entrepreneurship and tried to link with the development of capitalism, but his approach and conclusions are very much non-Marxian. Weber also in this context is not an expectation whose treatment of social phenomena is not different with Schumpeter. Weber's conception on attack on Marx's idea of materialistic explanations of history was too a challenge to the economics as an autonomous scientific discipline. This situation has been explained by Bendixes when Weber has demonstrated economic conduct was inseparable from the idea with which man pursued their economic interest, and these ideas had to be understood on their own term. Reflection and action 15.1 is Weber's and Schumpeter's analysis on entrepreneurs similar or different? Note down your answer. At that time, scholars of German historical school had been involving in asserting it for many years and rejecting classical economic theory on its strength. The new situation which emerged was Weber's assertions of entrepreneurship and development of capitalism on theoretical ground. Schumpeter 1980 stated that this exposition of entrepreneurship and development of capitalism rests on the fundamental distinction between static and dynamic situations. Both have formulated the theoretical structure at about same points of time. Schumpeter was trained in Austrian tradition of economic theory, and Weber in German historical school. 15.4 Contribution of Max Weber. Weber's idea on entrepreneurship and development of capitalism, in contrary with Marx, Weber's attack on Marx's view was that the capitalist, equipped by new techniques and driven by rational procurement, had always neglected the old traditional method and attitudes and had imposed on society his own ethos and a specific mode of production. Weber never accepted this and said that this was never a realistic situation for the process of capitalistic development. Even some situations had occurred in Weber's lifespan where a new man broke into a totally adopted traditional environment and mode of production was specially capitalistic therein. Apparently, here new man neither was equipped by a new invention nor was capable of revolutionizing industry. However, he had a new spirit. Weber afterwards takes a turn by emphasizing to capitalist form of an organization with capital turnover, entrepreneurial business activity, and rational bookkeeping. Nonetheless, it was also traditionalistic in every way. Box 15.1, Weber and Economics. Weber is always treated as a scholar of sociology but during the last span of his career, when he was a mature Weber, he devoted nearly a decade in developing of perspective which was no doubt sociological but blended with economics. As a matter of fact, Weber was trained in the field of legal history, thus, the area in which he may have been much renowned could have been history of law. He also devoted about 2 years in teaching economics at two leading universities of Germany, where he imparted the topics which were a combination of historical economics and marginal utility economics. So that's a special information. So continue with the previous paragraph. Apart from this, Weber thought out in apart from this, Weber throughout his academic career worked for propagating philosophy of social sciences, economic history, and political science. All these aspects can be observed in his idea about the entrepreneurship and development of capitalism. Weber's theoretical propagation of entrepreneurship is generally identified with the theory of charisma, which can be observed in Weber's analysis of exceptional type of human being, the charismatic man, who by virtue of extraordinary personalities influences others to follow him or her. Unfortunately, Weber's treatment of charisma was misunderstood by many scholars. In fact, Weber treated charisma as a significant agent of change of primitive phase of the society, and it has no relevance in modern capitalistic society where economic changes occur due to the enterprises which generate opportunities to make profit in market situation. Rationalization of society begins with the replacement of myth and religion by science and methodism. However, charisma has a big scope in development of capitalism in modern society. Weber's theory of entrepreneur and development of capitalism has two important aspects. One, as he was entrepreneur can be found, as he says, entrepreneurs can be found in economic system. And two, entrepreneur will have to do much more with the direction of economic action in a collective perspective wise enterprise, which certainly is not an economic operation of an individual. At elementary stage of this his work on entrepreneurship, Weber says entrepreneurship means the taking over and organization of some part of the economy in which people's needs are satisfied through exchange for the sake of making profit and at once on economic risk. His work, Protestant Ethnic and Spirit of Capitalism, is significant to understand the theory of economic development from two aspects. One, it brings out the reality of change in attitudes towards entrepreneurship that had been generated due to the transformation of Western society. Either one would be hostile or alienated for accepting or promoting its activity. And second, it brings out the fact that a certain kind of religious ethos, namely Protestantism, contributed a favorable condition for the development of capitalism, as well as work culture, which had given a scope for broader changes in the attitude of the society towards entrepreneurs. Prior to Reformation, there was no social acceptance for money lending, trade, and commerce, as well as entrepreneurship. Reflection and action for 15.2 is that outline the role of Calvinism and reinterpreting religious ideology. Religious sanctions did not allow to accept them not only in Western but throughout the societies around the globe. These endures, in fact, were at the best tolerated but never be embraced. A certain form of Calvinism, as well as some sects of Christians during 16th and 17th centuries, step up a movement of reforms by reinterpreting religious ideology, which brought major changes in the ethos of business and industry, as well as having its impact to the people who had accepted the modified ethics of religion in particular and society in general. At this point of reference, a positive condition for entrepreneurial work had emerged which led the capitalistic development. Henceforth, religious constraints gradually began with lasting their luster and control over the society. Soonly, in persuasion and of economic action, religious grip had been weakening. Hence, such a social condition had emerged where entrepreneurship to generate capital and become independent variable. Here, Weber demonstrates changes in cultural values and belief as the key of the development of capitalism among various social groups with their own world views. In early work, Weber gives much stress on entrepreneurship as the skillful direction of enterprises which corresponds to opportunities in market situation for making profit than the personality of an individual entrepreneur. Box 15.2 Entrepreneurship and Capitalism. Interestingly, Weber's contribution on entrepreneurship and development of capitalism, which appeared in his political and sociological writings from 1910 onwards, clearly indicate that Weber shifted his idea of entrepreneurship to bureaucrats. Weber, in this context, argues that as soon as society becomes more rationalized, bureaucracy dominates both enterprise as well as state. In case political bureaucracy succeeds in handling all the economic activities by socialist kind of revolution, capitalistic development will be stuck out and democratic system will be turned down by dictatorial system. In a capitalistic society, economic sector operates in coordinations with the political sector. Nevertheless, economy can be also shifted within a situation when bureaucratic notions within the individual enterprises are permitted to take over. In this respect, Weber had personally a dilemma. If it crystallizes, which is very likely rent would replace profit, the economy will fall down and soonly repressive political conditions would emerge in the society. According to Weber, entrepreneur is the only person in economic sector who can force to keep the bureaucracy at its proper place, as entrepreneur has an extensive knowledge and experiences of the business organizations rather than bureaucrats. The above discussions raises a question how to identify the routes by which entrepreneurial groups are guided into the business endeavors and capitalistic development in society. According to Weber, whose center was Protestant Europe, the Calvinist notion of the advisability to justifying one's faith in cosmic endures with no exception strengthened the choice of business as a profession. Nevertheless, at this juncture, Weber also felt a major influence of ascetic Protestantism. Protestantism was transformed leisurely, saying, satisfying traditional capitalists who happened to acclimatize new beliefs into perpetuating, even extending modern capitalism. 15.5 Contribution of Schumpeter. Schumpeter had looked at different theoretical aspects of entrepreneurship at different points of his lifespan. He, in fact, used a variety of approaches including psychology, economic theory, economic history, and sociology. It is worthy to note here that Schumpeter first propagated competent history of entrepreneurship in the economic theory. And in this regard, the history of economic thought has been influenced greatly by his approach, which still dominates the academic field. Although Schumpeter followed versatility and multidisciplinary approach, nevertheless, as evident by his writing, he never produced a concrete guidance for the behavior of entrepreneurs as business schools have been formulating it. It is worthy to note here that Schumpeter repeatedly had pointed out that when ordinary economic behavior is more or less automatic, the entrepreneur has always to think seriously over his or her action, which is to be taken as entrepreneur is involved in doing something that is fundamentally new. This is such insight which seem to be very significant, as when someone does something extraordinary, new does know how to proceed further, hence needs fresh guidance. Reflection and action 15.2. What is Schumpeter's vision of entrepreneur? Write down your answer. The idea of capitalistic process, which is the key point in the Schumpeter economic theoretical analysis, can be stated that circular flow, a development by Schumpeter, is distributed and transformed by the innovators and their imitators. Given to certain technical economic conditions, the business begin to make profit even when the market prices fall as a consequence of increased output. Here is it is important that aggressive entrepreneur breaking into placid circular flow armed with nothing will strengthen the idea of innovation. His or her success again obstacles of established firms, their forced liquidation of adoption is the key point on which Schumpeter interacted to a versatility throughout his career. Schumpeter's first effort to develop the theory of entrepreneur can be traced out in the theory of economic development. In this pioneer work, he tried to formulate a completely new economic theory and paid a bit little attention what earlier economists had accomplished. In this aspect, his argument was that all significant changes in the economy are initiated by the entrepreneur, and that changes then gradually work at their own through the economic system, that is, the business cycle. Schumpeter also regarded that his idea of endogenously generated change, as opposed to change induced from exogenous forces, not only acceptable to economic but to all social phenomena, and they could be conceptualized as consisting of two types of activities. On the one hand, there were creative and innovative activities, while on the other perspective, repetitive and mechanical activities. The second edition of the Theory of Economic Organization was published after the 1.5 decades later, in which Schumpeter made his argument more logical, systematized it, and broadened its implications. After 13 years, and other his work, Business Cycle, came up in which the carried further, and here he had distributed entrepreneurship in much technical sense. When we think of Schumpeter theory of entrepreneur, we simply mean entrepreneurship as innovation, and perhaps the point on which Schumpeter speaks rather directly of the entrepreneur. His main bulk of his work represent an attempt to develop many economic theories, as interest, capital, credit, profit, and business cycle, by interconnecting them to a theory of entrepreneurship. By doing so, he asserts that entrepreneurship can be definitely as the making of new combination of already existing materials and forces, that entrepreneurship related of making of innovation as opposed to inventions, and that no one in entrepreneurship forever only when or he or she is doing the innovative activity. Box 15.3, Schumpeter's typology of entrepreneurs. The typology given by him in the theory of economic development related to the practical implications among them. The first has gained much popularity due to its operationalism ability, operationalization ability of the behavior of entrepreneurs. These three typologies can be summarized as follows: one, introduction of new goods; the second, the introduction of new mode of production; third is the initiating of new market; and fourth is innovating new source of supply of raw material; and fifth, the creation of a new industrial organization. Schumpeter's second typology is also very much popular as it is related with the motivation of entrepreneur, and there are three important elements which motivates the entrepreneur. First, the dream and will to find out a private kingdom; secondly, the will to conquer; and thirdly, the joy of creating something. Only money is not sufficient to motivate an entrepreneur, as he expresses that entrepreneurs are definitely not economic men in theoretical sense. He goes to the extent by saying in the theory of economic development that his idea of related to the motivation of the entrepreneur easily comes in the field of psychology, and thus he has no scope in economic theory. During the last decade of his career, Schumpeter's views as evident in his village in writings shifting from economic theory to sociology and economic history. His work on capitalism, socialism, and democracy in 1942 is a sociological contribution. As in this work, his focus of inquiry is on the institutional structure of society, where he analyzes the entrepreneurial action function and conclude that a number of institutional factors are weakening entrepreneurship and contributing to the stagnation of capitalism as a social system, and people are more prone to change, resulting lesser oppositions to entrepreneurship as a routine. The big enterprises, though as a specialized team, are begging to develop some innovative technology. Hence, capitalism has such notion where society rationalize and demystifies among with the entrepreneurship. 15.6 Study on entrepreneurs other than Weber. The study of entrepreneurship have not much attracted the attention of practitioners of the discipline. Nonetheless, a few studies have been extended in this direction over a period of time, as it is an established fact that sociology has been influenced very much with its theory of social change and innovation, and as such this theory might be meaningful to analyze entrepreneurship in sociological frame. Durkheim's notion about change of society can be started in generalized form: more the population density, of more the demand, more the division of labor, and specialization occurs in the society to fulfill its demand. What specializations of work is meant for, it can be best be explained by that an entrepreneur throughout his or her career innovates the adventures for professionalism and expertization of work to succeed in the field of its own. In this aspect, Durkheim's idea of specialization of diverse division of labor and itself hints a theoretical genesis of the entrepreneurs. And perhaps these social conditions during 18th centuries might have led French Revolution and Industrial Revolution, which seemingly was a big phase of development of capitalism in European society. Analysis of entrepreneurship appeared even in the writing of modern sociologists. In this context, mention can be made to the word of Merton, in which he states that most of the discoveries had taken place accidentally. In this connection, it is difficult to elicit the causes. Further, in another article, he suggests there may be inadvertent relations between entrepreneur and crime in a society where much less is given to the decision of achieving desirable goal and people struggle on it. However, So we are missing somewhere, no? However, where is that? So here it is. So in a society where much stress is given to the direction of achieving desirable goal and people struggle for it, however, there also would be an adventure for goal attainment. This kind of social situation, as Merton say, compels to its member to render effort in searching of new avenue to succeed. Here, innovation is an unavoidable phenomenon, but there is also another situation. The members who does not succeed in social attainment, they are likely to adopt unfair means to succeed, which will lead the crime and deviance in society. In contrast to the other disciplines, sociologists had looked at entrepreneurship in a comparative frame. Such kind of analysis has may been done by Lipset. He finds out that intensity of economic development depend on cultural values and entrepreneurship in a given society. He compares two structures in Latin America and North America. In Latin America, Liberian culture is dominating. Culture is dominating through its notion of encouragement of natural labor practices, commerce, and industry. While the situation of North America is such where Puritan values laid emphasis on work and money making as a vocation and was predominant in most of the parts of United States and hence resulted the economic development. In Latin America, when libertarian values was replaced by the landed property and it had become the symbol of a success at this juncture, also economic development had taken place in Latin America. Conclusion 15.7. What does the idea about entrepreneurship and the theory of capitalism as given by different scholars in preceding pages lead up to? Now it is time to review the main thrust of theoretical contribution and its applicability. There is nothing doubtful that the contribution of Weber is of immense in the theoretical sense, but it seems weaker in its practical implication. It represents just social science as sciencing. In spite of this weakness, Weber's idea can be taken as point of departure for developing and shaping its practical applicability to entrepreneur with reference to the capitalistic development. And Weber's initial definition of entrepreneurship may facilitate in extending Schumpeter's individualistic entrepreneurship into a sociological perspective. The idea for survival of entrepreneurship, modern enterprise or an organization which is able to generate chances of profits is essential condition can be commented as that only creative personality loaded with bundles of idea is not sufficient for survival. Weber's notion of methodological work and money making as vocation as they have been demonstrated in the Protestant ethic raises as important question. How far elements of methodological work and money making articulates in the present dynamic situation of globalization and liberalization? This is much a question which perhaps needs modification of the theory or entrepreneurship and capitalism. 15.8 further reading. There is few books have given entrepreneurship, the social science, entrepreneurship and economic development, the entrepreneur and economic theory, and another one is economic theory and entrepreneurial history, and also some references as given: an intellectual portrait de la vision du travail social alcan, that is the division of labor in society, an international encyclopedia on social science, entrepreneur, value education and entrepreneurship, Schumpeter's and Max Weber's central vision and social theory, and some books on entrepreneurship and economic development, social theory and social structure, and comment on a plan for study of entrepreneurship, and some capitalism, socialism and democracy, the theory of economic development, and Max Weber, and idea of economic sociology. So these are few references. So this is the end of unit 15. Now we will go to unit 16. Thank you very much.